numbers are lower due to those reasons. Some costs involved that are being savings as well. Government Place Hostels, revenues lower by 75K. At the moment, we have 2 vacancies at the facility, which is affecting the level of government subsidies we're being receiving. Only recently, in the last probably 2 weeks, we've actually got another permanent resident that is coming on board, and which will reduce the vacancy down to 1, which hopefully we'll fill by year end. So fingers crossed that the facility is fully utilised. Sale yards revenues down by about 145,000. We've had a bit of a drop in our cattle numbers coming through February, March due to the wet weather conditions. However, April sales have shown an increase in activity. So hopefully we'll start to pick up some of our revenue there. Waste revenues up by about 137,000. We've got a increased revenue streams from our scrap metal sales, which is really good. So that'll end up going into a reserve once we wash out at the end of the year. General revenue is one of the main reasons why we're up on our revenue streams. We received our financial assistance grants in advance at late April, which was nearly about 75% of our financial assistance grants just before the election time frame took place. So it's up by about nearly $2.7 million. The ones that are pulling down slightly, airport operational revenues, it's lower than budget by about 120K, so lower landing fees, but our timing of our invoicing coming through, so we just need to go through and have a look at when that timing is going to be corrected. Wallbirds over Scones revenue was lower by 420K to budget. So the event is being reviewed at the moment, just going through and having a look at our final lot of numbers coming through. We've still got a few costs outstanding in that event, so we'll just tidy that up. Wallbirds Aviation Centres revenue is lower by 150,000. It's got to add slower traffic coming through the facility, so we're reviewing that budget at the moment and just comparing that back to what we initially anticipated. RMS State Roads, it's still lower than budget by about $140,000. We've had recent increase in our work requests, so hopefully that'll come back into line with budget over the course of the next 2 months. So obviously the Transport for New South Wales got a bit of money to spend before the end of the year, so obviously we'll get a fair bit of work out of that. Local roads revenues higher by about 1.7 million. Again, it's the financial assistance grants. So when we get the financial assistance grants, it relates to general fund as well as our road component as well. Non-operating revenue and expenditure. We're down by about 600,000 at the moment, and it's mainly the internal fleet hire charges, which is $500,000, and about 120 in quarry revenues. We've had a few decline with wet weather in our capital works program coming through. So over the May-June period, we should see an uptick in those recoveries coming through for our internal fleet and quarries. Moving to operating expenditure, a little bit underspent at the moment by about nearly $750,000, 750,000. Areas of interest in this area is child services cost. As I said earlier, with the revenue streams being down, it's about $210,000 in reduced staffing costs as well as carer payments coming through for that facility. So still a little bit behind where we wanted to be from a budgeting point of view, but it's a bit of an offsetter against the 350 in lower revenue. Government Place Hostels, as you know, with Government Place, our costs continue to be driving us the wrong way in regards to that facility. So we've still had the highest staffing costs, but we've also we engaged that consultant to review our residents' care dependencies, which ultimately gives us additional subsidies coming through into the future. So that was about nearly $60,000 of the 300. So that wasn't budgeted for initially. But we should see recovery of that over the course of the 12 months. Waste management costs are lower than budget by nearly $80,000, lower state government levies coming through, and also we had a staff vacancy that was filled filled midway through the year. Aerodrome operational costs are higher than budget by 67K, higher than expected operational staffing costs. So we're just reviewing those costs at the moment. The Warbirds operational costs, the Hunter Warbirds Centre operational cost is lower. Obviously, a bit of an offsetter against the revenue streams being lower, with the lower traffic coming through the facility.
Just a quick question then. What's the difference, sorry, between on page 2, the 151K lower than budget, but over here the 102? What's the difference there?
The 50,000 would be in regards to staffing costs and so forth at the facility, which we had to put all in place coming through. Bridge maintenance is lower than budget by about 120,000. We've only had minor repairs. Allen Bridge's maintenance works are set to commence, or they have commenced. So we're just waiting on some invoicing to come in for that, that bridge repair. And regional and local roads maintenance is lower by about 370K at the moment. And it's mainly in regards to the rural sealed roads being undertaken, the maintenance on those roads being undertaken to date. It's increased activity of that over the course of the May and June. So that'll pick up. Obviously, with the wet weather, we're a little bit behind in those areas. The other item that is a little bit underspent in our budget still is our capital works area. So there's a couple of projects there that make up this $1.5 million underspend. It's Scone Emergency Operations Centre, the fit out of the facility here in the admin building. The project's continuing, but we might have to defer some of those costs due to the time lag in delivery of the key project infrastructure. So we've got a number of items that are on order, but due to delays from getting them into the country and so forth, when we were hoping that they'd come before 30 June, but it's unlikely now. The Merriwa Showground Shed and Campdraft area is lower than budget by 90K at the moment. A little bit behind schedule, but it's expected to be completed by year end. The airport development is lower by about 330. Project is currently in the process of being finalised. So with the fencing that's going around the facility out there, so that will pretty well catch up and be finalised by year end. Footpath projects are lower by about $225,000. We've got 3 major projects currently in progress, and delivery of all those 3 projects are expected by 30 June. Bunnan Road upgrade, lower by about $600,000. We've got a major contractor out there going through the sealing process, so that will definitely catch up before the end of June and be finalised before June. 133 Kelly Street, just waiting on the final invoices from our contractor there, a bit behind budget by about 90,000, but the project's now complete and we're just waiting on those final costings to come through. And our sewer relining project's lower than budget by about 150,000. Project's continuing, finalisation expected by 30 June. So out of all those projects, we've only really got the emergency centre that doesn't look like we'll get to the end of delivery on that project by 30 June. So overall, as you can see there, the $4.58 million positive variance to budget. Budget position, pretty well there. We haven't done very many votes or surrenders coming through for this period, but in May we'll go through and do a major washout and look at our major capital works program and just see whether we have to bring any of those back out to bring back into the Depop for the current year we're going into, which will be highlighted in the adjustments to the Depop in the council meeting. Bank funds and investment report. 30 April, we've got $32.6 million currently in funds available, of which 32.1 of that is sitting in investments. And we'll have the schedule we can go through shortly. And the capital works report, as at the end of April, the revised budget is $31.6 million, dropped down from that $65 million budget we had originally adopted. Based on the spend to date, as you can tell with the $1.5 million underspend, we've spent about 71.74% of our revised budget year to date to the end of April. Just moving then into just our summary areas. So just our schedules that are attached to the report. So just to give you an overview, so we're pretty well 83% through the year now, 10 months into the 12-month frame. And more or less just give you an idea of where the general fund and the sewer fund and water fund are, and then the service areas coming through. We've got the requested votes there. Majority of the requested votes are in relation to the advance payment of the financial assistance grants coming through, and then just a few movements within some RAs just to tidy up and identify where the RA should sit come year end. So those budget variations as we come down is on page 11 with some descriptions on there. So we've just got a few things just coming through. Moving on to our bank and our little graph there on page 12. As you can see, we've got in the actual physical bank, we've got 540. There's been an uptick in our little worms there. So they've gone up based on the fact that we received the financial assistance grants in advance. So there's a little bit of an uptick there coming back up. And then on the investment side of things on page 13, gives you a list of what financial institutions we have invested our funds with, the principal, the interest rate, and how long they are. Interesting ones to note, obviously, with the talk with inflation going up, interest rates have also gone up. So we're starting to get back to some reasonable rates. So over the past couple of months, we've been able to secure rates that have been around the 1.8 to 2.8 mark. So which is quite good.
Just on that, Mr. Phelps, if I could ask, when we get to look to reinvest in those ones that are coming to maturity, what time frame are we reinvesting in?
We actually set down within the schedule in our investment policy. We have a schedule on how much we can put into different periods. We mainly look at 12 months predominantly, and that's mainly to have pretty fluid funds available as and when we need to, and we try to spread that across the year. So we'll think about when we can invest so that we end up getting a term deposit maybe falling due every second month or something along those lines, so that we have those funds available for major creditors. Plus also we do look at the rates and see whether or not it's attractive to put it in for a longer term. But majority of our funds have been on a 12-month basis, but we have invested for a bit longer to try and get a bit better returns coming through, especially with the NAB there. So we put that in for three months when the rates were only sitting around 0.6 to get 1.4%.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. And that looks to have made a positive impact on that decision.
Yep. Moving down then, just to get the capital works side of things, obviously it's a major part of the budget. Just a summary overall of the service areas capital works program coming through, and the main one there, which is underspent, is obviously the transport and communications area. So that one includes the airport and a lot of our road infrastructure. And then there's the detailed list going through from page 15 down to 27. So that's definitely there for you to have a snapshot of where our capital works program actually sits. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Any questions?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the Warbirds budget, do we have like a report on admissions since opening, like how many people we've had go through, like broken down by weeks?
Yep. Currently going through that process at this point. Okay, so great. We can provide that to councillors as soon as I have that available.
Cool. Then with the air show, so that was 420K lower than expected. What are the other expected costs and what was the income?
The income was about 350 to 360,000, excuse me. And we're expecting probably another 20,000 roughly in
Okay.
costs extra coming through.
Okay.
There has been some costs in the last week and a half, and they've been around about the 30,000 mark that we've noted. So about 50,000 since the April month end.
Okay. And do you have what the projections were prior to the air show and the projections were at original concept for?
Yeah. No, I can definitely do a
That'd be great.
report. Can do a report on that and provide to councillors. That's not
Thank
a
you.
problem. No problem.
Just on the air show, I just wondered, I mean, I was there on the Sunday, on the wet day. There was a little bit of confusion around ticketing when I was actually going in. I wonder if that, I presume we'll be going through a process of reviewing the charges on that front.
Yeah, we will. Look, some people got through and wanted their money back, but overwhelmingly people were happy to stay because they were able to view that $100 million worth of aircraft parked there on the tarmac, which was great. We were unfortunately affected by inclement weather, so we ended up with about 5,000 people coming. A break-even point was 8,000, and our expected attendance, had the weather been good, looking at the projections for pre-bookings, was about 10,000 people. So we ended up with less than what we were anticipating due to the weather, unfortunately.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, if you want to start yours.
No, go on.
So with the inclement weather, what was the contingency there as to, in terms of weighing up for future ones? Like at what point, I think I spoke to Greg at the time and said, well, what is the contingency? What are the figures looking like with inclement weather impacting it? At what point do we, take the insurance money and salvage what we can? So what would it have looked like budget wise if we had have cancelled the event and claimed insurance? How would that have come out in the wash financially?
Yeah, with the insurance, I think it only covered a wet weather event. It didn't cover what actually happened on Sunday, which was due to the cloud cover and turbulence. The visibility wasn't good, so it was actually dangerous for the pilots, which wouldn't have technically been covered. But the insurance excess was $100,000. So I guess we made the call that, we would proceed anyway, but there certainly would have been a lot of sunk costs that we paid up front.
Yeah, so what
it
kind of
wouldn't have
costs
been-
would they have been?
Sorry?
What kind of costs would they have been?
I'll have to get back to you on that.
Yeah,
But
it'd just be
there
good to
is-
know, like,
there
if we
is
did
certainly-
cancel at that point, what the costs would have been compared to what the costs are now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
cool.
correct. I mean, we can look at that, but there's certainly costs that we wouldn't have been able to recover had the event not gone ahead.
And if I could just, there was still so it's 5,000 to 6,000 people in town. Have we done any economic modelling as to what impact that had on the town itself and local businesses?
Yeah, our team has done the modelling, and we estimate the economic uplift about $2.4 million injection into the local economy. Very positive feedback from local businesses and restaurants and clubs, etc. So I mean that's the other side of it. The economic injection was quite significant.
And how? Sorry, just on that, how do you calculate that figure? Is it a sample type of a?
There's a bit of a formula. It's based on visitor numbers, average stay. It's per head. Expected expenditure in meals and shopping, etc., and accommodation, and expenditure in local shops. There is quite a detailed formula behind that, but just off the top of my head, I can't give you the actual breakdown. But it's $70 per head or something like that.
Would it be possible to see that? That would be interesting.
Yeah, we can provide that.
Have we got any more questions on 5.1?
Also, just Gummin Place. Where are we headed with Gummin Place?
Through you, Mr. Chair, councils recall there was a confidential report provided to council, so we're undertaking the actions from that confidential report, and we'll report that back confidentially to council.
Okay, what's the expected date for that?
Matt's not here. It's possible, I doubt, it won't be coming to the May council meeting, so it'll be June at the earliest.
Thank you.
All right, can I have a mover for 5.1? Councillor Flaherty, and I'll.
You're going to expect me to move all of them now?
Well, there you go. True. Righto. If we can move on to our second part of business here, 5.2, Scone Airport Project Update, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we look at page 28, we'll just go through the table, we'll update the status of the project. So, as we know, the airside contract has been complete for quite a while. Additional minor works to improve drainage at the southern end of the airport were completed in May. So we'd done some work previously, and then there was some additional small work that needed to be done. So that was completed. So that should be the end of that work there now. The surfaces of the runway, taxiways and aprons are being monitored through the cooler weather now. The defects at the Hunter Warbirds have been corrected by Kingston, which included adjustments to the hangar doors and a lot of touch-up painting and small fixes. So they've completed. On the budget, airside infrastructure is complete. Taxiway surface defects are being treated as a defect under the contract with Darracon. So there'll be some works there, but that won't be at any cost to council. The Warbirds visitor attraction and airport terminal contract is now complete. All variations for those contracts have been dealt with and complete. On the design side, there's still some engineering detail for the pole-mounted planes to be done by RHM. We're waiting on the structural details from the suppliers of the planes. In fact, one plane just arrived last week, so they can actually physically measure it and design the frame that will hold that plane up on a pole.
So sorry, Chris, these are planes to put at the front entrance, are they, on a pole?
Mr. Chair, yes, one of them is what's known as a gate guardian, which is a plane on a pole, at the entranceway, and the other one is an internal inside the hangar itself. There's a plane to be on a pole, so it'll be up higher than the others. So there's been a change in that plane that they're going to put on that pole, but the footings are all within the slab and bolts are there ready to bolt a pole to and mount the plane to. So there's a bit of engineering design work to be done on those two. Obviously, planes up on poles, we've got to make sure they're not going to fall down on someone. So it has to be certified.
Will those planes be permanent fixtures, the two on poles?
Through the chair, the one on the outside pole will be a permanent fixture. The one inside, if not permanent, it will be there for a long time. And I understand that the displays within the hangar may change over time, like longer periods of time. So in 5 years' time, for instance, I'm guessing perhaps it might be a different plane, but we've put the footings in to hold the biggest plane that you could ever put up there. So, well, the heaviest plane rather than biggest, if you like. Know what I mean?
Yeah, just at the airport committee, it was explained that there has to be significant engineering within the fuselage of the plane because it's obviously, you can't just mount it from the bottom on a pole. And that does have a useful life from what was explained. So we have to do, after a couple of years, risk assessments to see if that's still robust enough. So there could be a turning over every couple of years within that display.
The major contracts have been completed and work health and safety has been good, been fantastic on that project. I'm not aware of any major incidents. I guess the one everyone will remember is when there was the structural failure, there was people on the site that they removed people from the site, and that wasn't really an incident. It was a response to something. So nobody got injured, and it's been tremendously managed by the major contractors across that project. They deserve recognition in that. So this period, what we've been working on, if we look on page 29 underneath the table, at the visitor attraction, completion of the defects, as I've mentioned, the doors and some painting and minor defects. And we've been working on the fencing around the Hunter Warbirds. Now that's not yet complete. And airside, as I said, the minor drainage works at the southern end, that's complete, and the installation of fencing around the airport perimeter, which is also not complete. The fencing is about 75% complete at the moment, and we expect it to be finished in another 2 weeks. Next period's activity, completion of the installation of the simulators inside the Hunter Warbirds, installation of a sliding door, which will allow the terminal to be isolated from the Warbirds facility, so we'll be able to then use that after hours for access to pilots. Installation of locks throughout the facility. That's something you do after construction's finished. So they'll be, all the locks will be keyed consistent with our master locking system. Installation of electrical works at the Sewell pump station. That'll be completed in June. And yeah, we'll complete the fence around the Hunter Warbirds by the time I'm sitting here next month. And airside civil works, apart from the fencing around the perimeter, is the construction of the workshop to house the mower and tractor and other plant that they've got there. Critical issues for the month is really just monitoring progress of the remainder of the works. Major risks is monitoring the runway, taxiways and apron surfaces, but as the weather has cooled down, far less a problem than they are in the hot weather. We've had some reports, as I've reported previously, and at the moment, we're just watching and seeing how they perform over the cooler months. Now, if we turn to page 30, and in the middle of the page, under the second table, at the bottom of the second table, the Warbirds Visitor Attraction and Airport Terminal, the actual completion date for Kingston for the contract was the 1st of May. That was when they'd finished their work on the defects. If we move now to...
So sorry, Chris, so they've packed up now, Kingston, they've fully completed and out of the site there now?
Yes, that's correct. If we move to page 34, and the second table there, expenditure. So the second table, the budget expenditure for 2022. So the revised budget was 6.95 million. We've currently spent 6.6 million. And the majority of the underspend is the fencing, which will be finished soon. And then the simulators we haven't paid for yet until they get those right. And then the workshop will be the other major spend there. That's what the shortfall is. So that's about it. Are there any questions?
Just one, Chris. I just had a remark from a resident. They were wondering, are there any more gardening operations to go on out the front of the shed there? They were under the impression there was more garden to fill that space.
Big pardon?
We had a landscape plan. Chris, you might want to explain that. I don't know where it's at in regard to completion though.
Mr. Chair, the short answer is no. There's no additional, apart from the seeding on some of the areas where we grass seeded hasn't taken because we didn't get very much warm weather and sunshine after it was seeded. So the contractor that did that work is keeping an eye on it, and there's potential that in spring they'll come back and spread some more seed in probably August when we'll get another growing season. but the landscaping, there wasn't the landscaping itself, apart from that, is pretty much finished. Now, there was a landscaping plan that was put together with the project going way back a few years. And there was a budget allowed for that of a certain amount. And then when they then put that plan out, it was during the construction stage, they then put that plan out to get costed. The costings came in about 3 times what was allowed for in the budget.
Okay.
So we had to do serious adjustments to the landscaping, and they got multiple prices. It wasn't just they got one.
And is that something that might organically work over time, as I imagine there'll be staff and volunteers there that might have a green thumb, and perhaps we could still work towards that?
Oh, there's nothing
Perhaps
preventing that
just
from
take
happening
along.
at all. Yes.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I think that's actually a good idea. There's a lot of gardeners in town who might actually enjoy doing something like that. If we paid for the costs, I think it'd be something worth exploring.
Yeah, we do have a volunteer that's out there that just wants to do the yard work. In terms of the seeding of the garden areas, ideally we would have been like to turf it, but it just proved too expensive at the end of the day. So a bit of a time lag between when the seeding takes on, so we have to wait for the seasonal effects to be favourable.
And I assume that's just a bit of kike, is it?
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Chair, no, it's cooch.
Okay.
Yes, and the turf has taken very well.
Yep.
Originally, they were browned off a bit, but it's now really green and quite nice. But the whole landscape outcome was budget driven, and
Sure.
we had to make serious adjustments to pull it back in under the budget.
That's all right. I think time will fix our monetary issues there.
Yeah, and I'll just let you know that where there's gardens, there is reticulated watering to those as well.
Oh, great.
Yes, that was a must. Otherwise, when the weather does warm up and dry out, everything would have died. So
Yep.
we've got that's being reticulated water from the grey water tanks, the rainwater tanks that's on the side of the building.
Yep.
When they're empty, it will be town water.
Through you, Mr. Chair, how are we going with signage at the airport?
Through Mr. Chair, I'm open for advice as to what signs are expected to be put there.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, we might need some clarification. So the warbird signage on the building has been completed. The Scone Memorial signage on the terminals completed, and the Scone Memorial Airport signage on the gates is completed. So are you talking about more traffic signage as you approach the facility?
No, more signage within the facility of how to find different places on the
Okay.
airport and emergency, rally points. Just once you're actually in there as a visitor, what's where. And I think we've spoken previously, there's been discussions, I think, with David Gatwood a long time ago, about being able to have some kind of uniform directory at the entrances to the airport to say where things are, rather than in the future operators out there putting up their own signs and having stuff everywhere. So
Yeah.
some kind of uniform directory.
They're just general
would be handy.
directional signage as you
Yeah.
come in.
Yeah.
Just
Okay,
just on the signage, I just wonder, I know where the airport is, so I can happily drive there. But for visitors, have we got signage at Liverpool Street and at the roundabout to head us in the right direction?
I believe there's a sign at the corner of Liverpool and Kelly Street, one of the blue directional signs that just says simply airport, and I think it gives a distance marker as well at that point. There's also a sign at the Moonan Road roundabout that identifies the direction to the airport. I don't think there's anything coming in from the Bunnan Road end because it's such a long road with no cross streets. It's it's a regional road anyway. So that's the signage that I'm aware of that's in place.
So
Yeah,
through-
one of the one of the actions coming from the airport committee was to look at signage in the gateway area, so Merriwa and coming in from the west and from the south and the north, so clearer signage. So that's the next thing we're going to be looking at.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I know we've got the little blue ones if you're trying to find where it is, but would there be any kind of promotional signage that we could have in the town that when visitors are here, they're, made aware we've got the Warbird Museum and might be attractive to go out there?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I know that part of the CBD committee were looking at revamping all the signage, particularly the signage on the corner of Kelly and Liverpool Streets as part of the CBD upgrade. They wanted to refresh all that, and through the discussions with the Hunter Warbirds, there was quite a lot of discussion about getting more signage on the highway. We've got 2 billboards at present advertising the Warbirds facility on the highway, but there was more signage that they were looking at and ideas around that.
I think also too there was a aspirational idea come up in the Airport Services Committee that of planes on poles, perhaps down the highway as well, which going forward might be a really interesting draw point. Got any more?
Yeah.
questions?
The box above the box you mentioned, where there's a difference of 2 mil. Can you walk me through that, please?
Through the chair, is that on page 34?
Yes, yeah. So when we look at box number 1 compared to box number 2, is that where, it's come out in the wash, or were we over budget by 2 mil in that year, full stop?
Yeah, the top box is last year, as you can see at the top there. So we spent more than budget last year. So I believe the question is, will the project be over budget when you add those two together?
So is it an aggregate now that we're looking at the, being slightly under here at the moment?
The project is still forecast to finish under budget.
Okay.
So, Councillor, if you look at this handout, it gives you a summary.
Okay, I'll go through that one.
If I can just add to that, if you go down to the next box, I think that's sort of we come under budget just on that next one. Does that clarify?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of wondering
anybody?
if that's the case. Yeah, okay, cool. Thank you.
If we got any more questions on 5.2, I'll move that motion there. We've got a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Flaherty. If we can move on to corporate 5.3, Airport Management Committee.
I guess I'm going to speak to that one. With our committee restructure, one of the improvements we implemented was the coming of these subcommittee reports to the standing committee. So this is the first time that these will have come to the corporate services. The information is there for you to look at. I probably will take any questions from the committee. There's lots of things we discussed. It's just talking about just general operational type things like any incidents or concerns that the committee may have, and just a general update on the construction, which you've sort of already received from Chris. A similar update would have been given verbally by Chris at the committee, and also from Mark, just from an operational perspective. So I guess if there's any specific questions, I'm happy to take them or take them on notice.
We'll probably ask. I was part of this committee. One of the enlightening things was for me the invoicing of aircraft landing into there and some of the issues we're having. When should we discuss that further?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we're looking at the moment. We're looking at the method of invoicing because something's not working, there's flyovers that still getting billed, they're getting radioed incorrectly. So we're working with AIMS to get a better system of doing that. We do have the secondary information of looking at the actual footage of planes landing, so we have that as well, but we don't have the resource to sit there and look at that all the time, and there's nighttime movements as well. So we're looking at a better methodology of doing that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, what does ARO stand for? Could we have acronyms spelled out in the future?
Yeah, sorry about that. Probably because it's a committee, they understand
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
The airport reporting officer.
Right, okay, cool.
Any more FAQs?
All right, we happy to move on? All right, I move that the minutes of the Airport Management Committee be accepted. We've got a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Flaherty. Our next agenda item is 5.4, Scone and Upper Hunter Regional Sale Yard Committee minutes, and I'll pass over to Director of Finance again, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, the first meeting of our newly formed committee, I think actually went quite well. Some pretty good discussion around that. There is the numbers have been down, but there's general buoyancy and genuine buoyancy and optimism from the agents in terms of the turnaround in the numbers. They reckon we could be seeing a recovery as soon as 12 months, which would be great. So get us back up to that 1,000 level, and then beyond that to bring, I guess, net revenue back into the business, so which is great. Again, we're just talking about the general stuff. Any incidents? There's a couple of incidents reported. Just operational type stuff is probably not of interest in this forum. We did talk about the fees and charges and implementing a new system of charging a percentage per beast of the sale value in conjunction with the set fee. So we're looking at that methodology during the exhibition of the Depop. So we'll probably get an improved fee structure for that.
And that was on the special sales, wasn't
Correct,
it?
on the special sales, yeah. So yeah, that got a fair bit of discussion, and I think we're all going in the same direction. We all want this facility to do well. We know that it's fallen on hard times due to the drought. One thing that is still affecting the numbers, I mean, a lot of people say, well, the drought's finished, how come it hasn't recovered? A lot of producers are not selling their heifers. They're not taking them to market because they need them to restock. But again, the view is within 1 to 2 years that will have turned around, and we'll see an improvement in the sale numbers.
I think you're seeing also through that sale yard a big consideration there that I haven't heard too much of is the animal welfare. I've had a long period of using the sale yards, and the upgrade to I mean, the shed's the greatest thing. We've got shade over everything, but the upgrade to the soft floor and the way that seems to be working is just great for animal welfare. And I know that in the past, the sale yards have been had reduced buying potential because people look at the welfare issues around sale yards, and so congratulations to those involved in getting those animal husbandry issues up too. Have we got any questions on that one? Any further? All right. Well, I'll move that the minutes of the sale yard be accepted. If I've got a seconder for that, please. Thank you, Councillor Flaherty. And finally, if we move to corporate 5.5, responses to previous questions, if I could pass over to Mr. Phelps.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So overall, as you can see, the answers that have come through in regards to the councillor questions there, so that's just for your own benefit, just to have a look at. The only one really to note there is just the updated contingency items that was provided today under separate cover. More or less just a summary to the end of March of the contingency of the airport budget and where that contingency has been spent. So obviously we started off with a number that was sitting around the $3.36 million mark in our original contingency. Quoted to date, which is the quoted column for the contingencies that we have actually got on the go at the moment, is 3.39. However, we've had some budget savings during April that has brought that contingency from a negative 28,000 back into a positive $50,000 mark. So we're around the mark with regards to our contingency side of things, and especially with the project now all but complete, we should be within that contingency frame. The actual spend we have for our contingency is still, there's about 300,000 still to spend. Just bits and pieces to tidy up some items coming through. The major contingency there that you'll see is mainly on the second last line of the summary page there, which is the $1.8 million, or 1.7 we've actually spent to date on the aviation centre and terminal building. In the detailed version, the pages after the summary page gives you a detailed version of the breakup of what represents those items. And I've actually put them in order so that you can see, so like the aviation centre, they'll all be listed down below each other, each contingency for it, so you can actually don't have to keep searching through it to try and find those items. So they've been sorted in order of the summary page, so it makes it easier for you to look at it, more transparent. But the main reason for the 1.8 is the fire suppression. So effectively we had to spend the $1.1 million, I think it was $1.2 million on fire suppression on the facility. So that's there for your for viewing. Obviously we'll provide an updated contingency once the project's nearing completion, just to give you an idea of the final wash up of the numbers.
And I have, just on one of those questions that I'd asked, I have spoken with the Director of Infrastructure about the intersection of Glenbourne Road and Gundy Road, and was quite happy to hear that my concern was that that intersection is structurally really good, and there's lots of other roads that are not structurally good at the moment, but she advises me that that is being reconstructed on a safety issue, and I'm more than happy to see safety increases in our road infrastructure. We've got any more questions? We finish up. Very good. All right. Well, I'll ask to, have I got a mover for the questions? 5.5. Apparently we don't need to move that. We'll just note that, please.
I'll move it.
I'll second. Thanks, Karen. All right. Well, thank you all for attending. We'll call the meeting closed at 9:50.